All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rise Above Justice Movement, the podcast. My name is Zachary Mallory, and I am the host and the founder of the Rise Above Justice Movement and the Rise Above Justice Movement, the podcast. All right. So I'm here again with another addition to our candidate series. We are doing this series to highlight progressive and grassroots candidates running at all levels across the country. We've had over 200 responses to candidates that are running to represent people, not a corporation, not special interests. And there's a common theme amongst all the candidates that I'm interviewing, and it is affordability and getting money out of politics. Those are the two top things that I have heard. And, today I am joined by Coach LeVon Barnes. Welcome to the podcast. So excited to sit down and talk to you.
Hey, thank you so much for being invited to the podcast. I truly am honored to be here.
You were recommended multiple times, and we have a lot of mutuals. And I'm excited to dive into your background and dive into who you are and why you're running, which brings me to the first question. Who are you? And why are you running for almost said Congress? I've interviewed so many Congress candidates,
One step at a time. One step at a time. Let's get to the state house first.
but you were running for North Carolina House District 64. So walk us through your background, who you are,
Absolutely.
and what's led you to run.
Absolutely. My name is Coach LeVon Barnes, and I'm originally born and raised in New York City, to two parents who did not go to college. I lost my dad when I was 9 years old, so I was raised by my mother, who had to work multiple jobs in an area of New York City that, was a little bit suburban, a little bit, um, you know, not necessarily like low income, but, just it was a mix. But, I was proud of the childhood that I had. I played four sports in high school, went to college at Campbell University, which is in Bowies Creek, North Carolina, where I majored in physical education and health. Decided I wanted to be a teacher, um, pretty early on because I wanted to coach. And, got my first teaching job in PG County, Maryland. And I kind of, was really, really good at coaching college basketball, and was a college basketball coach for about 12 years before coming back to North Carolina in 2013 by way of Scranton, Pennsylvania at that point, where I was the dean of students and the head college basketball coach at a small junior college there. And then once I moved back to North Carolina to Durham, where I teach and um, lived for pretty much 10 years, I knew I wanted to run for office. I have I have a youth empowerment program called Young Male Achievers, that I started in 2005 when I was teaching in Maryland and brought it here. And one of the issues that we were having at our school, um, was, we would see a lot of high suspension rate. And when I started YMA in Maryland, it was primarily to prevent recidivism in gangs. So I was seeing a lot of young black and brown males. I myself affected very much so by gangs as well. So I was trying to be like the gap between. When I came to the school that I'm at now, I didn't have to deal with that as much, but I saw a lot of just young men just kind of like they needed the extra little help. And and then being a teacher, we were I'm very much on the front lines of all of the issues that we see in government, and teachers across America, but specifically here in North Carolina, have, found solutions and answers for our families who are in need in real time. And but I always knew I wanted to run for office. One of my favorite shows is The West Wing, so that kind of dates me a little bit. But I knew in order to affect the most good for the families that I serve and many of the families that I've been around was to be, in the state house, honestly, ultimately. But I started my political career running for city council in 2017 in Durham, and then I ran in 2024 for county, I mean, excuse me, in 2020 for county commissioners in Durham before I bought a house in Mebane during COVID time and um, you know, ran for state house. So long story short, um, I've always been about community. I've always been about paying it forward. I feel to whom much is given, much is required. And um, uh, um, my calling has always been a purpose of servitude, and I'm a servant leader, and so running for office is something that I feel is just the right thing to do at this moment.
I think your website says, and this is going to dive into the first talking point, is about affordability. And you phrase this so perfectly, and I'm just going to read directly from your website because this is absolutely perfect. You don't need a coach to tell you what everyone is already feeling. Everything is too damn expensive from groceries to gas. Here's the thing. I pay $118 for my phone bill, and that's three phones. Okay. I know that's on the lower end, but I'm getting to why it's insane. So, going to the gas pump, I can fill up my mom's car, which is a 2019 Nissan Rogue, and it takes close to $100 to like do like the entire because it's $4 a gallon for gasoline. Okay,
Yeah.
she has doctor's appointments. She has, she's going through cancer treatments. So obviously that takes a lot going back and forth to doctors, going back and forth to the hospital, doing all of that. And then also doing grocery shopping. And then also, just everyday commuting, right?
Yeah,
It should not cost almost an entire phone bill plus some to even get through gas in like an entire week. That is beyond insanity to me.
it
And
is.
families shouldn't have to choose between keeping the lights on and putting food on the table while corporations rake in record profits. This is one of those mic drop moments, Coach. I'm gonna let you know that now because it really is. But you
Yeah.
would think this in 2026, this would be common sense, right?
Yeah, well,
But
my mama always used to say, well, common sense ain't always common. So
and common sense sometimes is not in the rooms
that's
with
correct.
us, right?
Absolutely.
So walk me through what are some of these top concerns that you were hearing from people in District 64 whenever you get out? Have you been like canvassing and like phone banking and such? What are
Yeah,
some of those concerns that you're hearing from your constituents?
well, that's a great question. First of all, I'm working class, so their concerns are my concerns, and I tell people all
Yes.
the time, your kitchen table conversations are like mine. I forgot to mention that. I have a 3.5-year-old that's about to be 4. Shout out to Harper, the official campaign manager, and I'm married to my wife Kelly, and she was also a public educator. And so. This is 23 years of education for me, overall, and the issues that the people in my district are facing when it comes to one, how's your Duke Energy bill? That's the number one question I ask the most, and right now everybody's bill is extremely high, and I say, listen, your bill is going to be even higher because my opponent voted to give Duke Energy pretty much unfettered access to raise rates. And so not to mention, the data stations, data centers that are now going to also be raising people's rates. So, we already don't pay enough not even just from an teacher standpoint, but we don't pay our troopers enough. We don't pay our minimum wage is 7.25 still, which is the national federal minimum wage, which hasn't moved since Barack got it in like maybe like 2009, right? Um, we need wages that are gonna allow people to thrive and not just survive, and that's what the people in my district are feeling right now is feeling like they're constantly drowning and they're doing all the right things. And this is Republican, this Democrat, this is unaffiliated people that I come across. They're just like it's unaffordable. I constitute it like this. Um, it's almost every person's dream to own a house. Not everybody, wants to own a house, but I think the vast majority of folks want to own a home. You work so hard to obtain that dream. And you did all the things, you checked all the boxes, you saved all what you can. And so now we're at a point where you might be priced out of your own home that you bought. When you talk about on the website, like people are going to have to make tough decisions about, do I keep my lights on or pay my mortgage? Do I keep my lights on or pay my car note? Do I keep my lights on or not eat? Or, like these are unnecessary choices that people have to make in 2026 in the quote unquote richest country in America. I mean, excuse me, in the world, right? Um, and so I want to bring a working class vision and lens into the General Assembly. I think it's important that we have that. We do not have that at all. Uh, the the Republicans have had a almost super majority for 16 years. If they really gave a damn about the people of North Carolina, or they cared about, or any level of humanity, they would have had policies in place that don't deregulate our environments, that don't deregulate energy, um, that look out for the people and not the corporations. And we haven't had that.
And it's very obvious that corporations do not work for us, despite, Citizens United in 2010 said that corporations and money is essentially free speech. We know that that's absolute bullshit, coach. We know
Exactly.
that.
Exactly.
And there's one point of your platform that, and this is still on the, affordability, because this is such a huge topic.
And
But
I want to correct you on the affordability piece, right? I know I have it as affordability, but what it really is um a coal. It's cost of living emergency, right?
ooh,
Affordability
yeah,
very much is,
yeah.
if I can't pay my bills, that might be an affordability issue. But if my neighbor can't pay their bills, it's a cost of living emergency. And so that's really where we're at, is a cost of living emergency. But we like the
Mhm,
affordability as a one word track,
mhm.
people that can understand it. But I also talk about like that cost of living emergency is a real thing in people's homes as well. So I wanted to just kind of like throw that in there.
Thank you for that. That's actually going to help me approach this in a different angle and a different view, because you're right. And it's also a systemic failure. It's also a policy choice that, as we said, common sense sometimes isn't in the room with us, right? It's 2026. We should already be addressing these. And North Carolina is no exception. I am physically based in Kansas, and I grew up in
Kansas
Missouri.
City. Oh, that's right. I was about to say Kansas City, Missouri, or Kansas City, Kansas. I've been to both.
I grew up right outside of Kansas City, Missouri, in the home of Harry S. Truman. So Independence, Missouri is my hometown. And my partner grew up in southeast rural Kansas. So whenever those worlds like collide, it creates a whole dynamic policy platform, which is where a lot of the questions, obviously comes off of candidates' backgrounds and like their platforms, but it also comes from me being suburban and then her being rural. Like you match those two, and that's one hell of a policy platform, because it's the working class. And speaking of working class, so on your platform, as part of your plan, is create a Carolina family affordability credit for working families. Can you walk me through what that would look like and what steps you would take to implement this?
Well, I mean, we need there are things that I feel like we should have as a human right. One of those things is like paid paternity leave,
Yes.
maternity and paternity. Some of our neighbors in Europe do it right, where they get 365 days of that. Those of us who have children, and have gone through difficult pregnancies, and it's not just affecting, the mother of the child, very much so, but then it's also it affects the family. Um, and so like that would be something that I would look to do, look to see is given much maybe um an extension, a bigger extension of paid paternity and paternity leave. And they don't have to take it at the same time. They can separate it. Um, I'm looking at trying to do a fair wage tax. That's something that where, um, this could greatly benefit, you know, uh, education is by we're looking at taxing if you're 500,000 or a million or $500,000 or more, that fair wage tax would specifically go towards public education funding, right? Which also affects families, because the majority of the of North Carolinians send their children to public schools overwhelmingly.
Mhm.
Um, Raising the minimum wage is like a package of things that I feel like we need to be doing. Raising the minimum wage to $20 an hour, at least $20 an hour, is something that we should be doing as a state. Most businesses are already paying 15 to 17 an hour. $20 an hour is not out of the realm of possibility. Um, so those are a couple of things that I feel like are going to help families thrive and not just survive.
Mhm.
And I got that from the fact that I have educators that I work with that are working two, three, or four jobs, right, on top of the main job, and still are barely being able to pay their rent. We're not even talking about a mortgage, but a rent. I have teachers who are and educators, and when I say educators, everybody that's in a school system, from the cafeteria staff to the bus driver to our maintenance folks, they all interact with our kids. They're all educators, So, when I have educators living in their car, it's not right. And, you know, we're there's so, I think about like the amount of time that I spend with your child, which ultimately is going to be more hours than you spend with your child. I think, ultimately, is more hours than you actually spend with your kid. And so why wouldn't you want somebody, why wouldn't you want, and I'm just using educators right now because that's just in my
Yeah,
scope.
absolutely.
Why would you not want that educator to not just focus on that one job? Like we should want the educators, all of us want to just do that job that we signed up for. We don't want to do that job, and this job because we have to do that job. If we want to do that, it's just because you just want to do that. But we need to start thinking about like the human approach to things. Um, and I just feel like that's where we need to be going in this state is, we just have so much talent here, and all that talent is being wasted because they literally are just like drowning. They have no hope. So cost of living, in trying to create a package for that is a priority for me.
Coach, you're bringing so much like energy to this,
Yeah.
and I love this. And it's going to kind of like go into my next thing that I wanted to talk to you about is investing in our kids' futures. And obviously, we see these voucher scams, or as you say, voucher schemes, because they're literally they're literally draining the public dollars from
Yeah.
local schools, and it caters who? These voucher scams are not going to fly in rural America, and it's not going to fly anywhere because we're not going to allow it to happen because we need to fully fund public education. I am a graduate of a public education. I went through public school my entire schooling from kindergarten through 12th grade, class of 2015. Um, I know I'm young. I'll be 30 years old this year. It doesn't feel like it feels like an eternity ago, but um, it'll be 11 years since I graduated. And I know how rough it was for me going through school. You know, I was one of the only openly like LGBTQ kids in my entire class. I know what it was like for me. I cannot imagine what students are facing these days. With the cuts to Department of Education, it is devastating to me. And putting money towards these vouchers, and I want to get your perspective as an educator, and feel free to pop off on this because I know you're going to. But let's talk about what these vouchers would actually do to your district, to your community, and what your thoughts are on this.
Well, I mean, the voucher scam um, is detrimental to the entire state of North Carolina. I mean, I don't know what North Carolina, I don't know what our legislators are thinking. Like you have way more conservative states that have not passed the level of this system in like states like Alabama and Mississippi. They have said no, we're not going to do that. Once the GA got rid of the cap, it changed the what the voucher program would have been about. I first of all I have to caveat that I believe in school choice. If you as a parent want to send your child to whatever school, I believe that you have the right to do so. Um, However, not on the backs of taxpayers and definitely not on the backs of public schools in which we are already unconstitutionally, I don't care what the state Supreme Court just voted on for here,
Mhm.
unconstitutionally not funding our public schools, and it's being purposely done that way. Um, so I think that it's going to cost us almost $500 million in the next 2, 3 years for a small number of people that to take advantage of the actual vouchers. You know, people the folks who were fitting in the tier 1 category that were just trying to give another option to their child, you know, can no longer really access the program because private schools have raised their tuition, of course. You know, I saw that coming. And so we need to stop this voucher system the way that it is, and we need to get some educators in office or be collaborating with educators and education advocates of how we can make it equitable. Okay, but until we fund public schools in the way that we want to fund this voucher program, I would definitely vote to repeal it in the whole as it stands right now. In Alamance County, in my district, we don't have we don't have a lot of I mean, it's a very small percentage. I forgot what the off the top of my brain what that percentage is right now, but it's not even like 2% who can take advantage of the voucher program, who are taking advantage of the voucher program. And the majority of the people who are taking advantage of the programs across the state, but specifically in Alamance, are already making over $100,000 a year. The families are making beyond the cap. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't need to do it. So we're just funding rich families private education for free. And I'll just also say this. We hear a lot about indoctrination that, we as public school educators are indoctrinating our students. Um, this is how out of tune, out of touch the Republican Party is on this issue. When an educator is working 2 or 3 jobs, trying to deal with classroom issues, trying to do all the things that's required, believe me, we do not have enough time to indoctrinate your children. If anything, I do indoctrinate your children to be good people, have good character, to pay it forward, to be a good citizen, to take a shower. These are things that I try to indoctrinate our kids on, like put your name on your work. You see the little red, you see that red line underneath the word. That means the word is spelled wrong. Don't turn it in with the red line. Those are the indoctrinations that I do, and I think that 99.99% of educators across this state do. Um, but you see where these vouchers are going. They're going to private Christian um, or religious schools. and as a Christian myself, I don't want my tax dollars um to go towards schools that could discriminate at the end of the day. And so yeah, that's not what the purpose of that is for.
No, 100%. I consider myself to be a progressive Christian too. And coach, I'm going to tell you this. I do not want, or I would not have wanted to walk into a classroom and see the Ten Commandments posted in the classroom.
All these
Because,
Donald Trump Ten Commandments. You gotta, because some of them have the Donald Trump Ten Commandments on top.
yes, and it's insane to me. And also the Donald Trump Bible, don't forget about it. Anyway,
But you gotta hold that backwards and you have to look at it in the mirror because that's the only way you can read it. I heard it comes with a hair plug too. So if you need that.
I mean,
Oh.
um, thank you for that. I love the commentary on this. But moving into thinking about expansion. So, thinking about expanding like career and technical education options. So, we need to set our future generations up to be leaders in their communities, to also run for office like you, to become an educator like you. Like I would have loved to have an educator like you whenever I was going through school, like that actually wants to build that student up rather than discriminate and tear that student down and literally try to ruin a reputation. Speaking from personal experience, I had my fair share of good educators versus horrific educators, but I also don't blame them. I blame the system, right? The same way as whenever it comes to healthcare, whenever it comes to criminal justice, like it all works in tandem. And there's also a thing called the school to prison pipeline, which we'll address here in just a second. Because I have a story about a high school that I used to work at. I'll share that here in just a moment. But whenever it comes to funding like the after school programs and like the nutrition programs, and then expanding career and technical education options. Again, this is already on your website, but let's kind of dive into that a little bit. What would that look like, and how would that help schools in your district and across the state of North Carolina?
Well, I mean, I look at it the whole child, right? How
Mhm.
can a child learn when they don't have food, proper nutrition? How can a child learn when they live in an area that is under resourced, that has a lot of crime, and they have to sleep on the floor because they're worried about bullets flying over their head, right?
Yep.
I look at the fact that, I have seniors. I work with a lot of, I have many jobs in my building, but one of those is senior coordinator and graduation coordinator, right? And so, which we're about that time, right? And I develop relationships with all of my students, to a point where there's a couch in my office, and I mean, literally today I had a young lady who was, you know, slept on the couch. Um, but I think about the fact that I have students right now whose primary job is not school, is taking care of their siblings when they're supposed to be focusing on trying to get up out of here because their parents have to work two, three, or four jobs, right? I don't think people really realize like the importance of nurturing the whole child. And we need to be having programs for our young people and for our families that are going to assist in, just making it easier. I think that's the purpose of government, right? The purpose of government is not to give a handout, which is what they'll make you believe that it is. The purpose of government is to give opportunities.
Mhm.
And I'm all about, excuse me, I'm all about making opportunities happen for our families so they can thrive.
Mhm.
And so, having these look, whether it's before school programs, after school programs, having parenting school, having like I think about all of the things that when I became a parent, a geriatric parent, so the doctor says, when I became a parent, I thought I knew how to be a parent because I've been in education and I've had to be a mentor, but I listen, I'm learning. It's like a Google Doc. I'm learning every day, right? toddlers are
Copy and paste.
yeah, definitely toddlers are gangsters. And I've never felt more inadequate as a person than being a toddler parent, but I also have help.
Mm-hmm.
My wife does such an awesome job of being a mother, but I also think about like the people who don't have the two,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, they don't have the some don't even have the education to be able to help their children, right? So like putting having programs in place, funding, people want their government to fund programs that they can reach out and touch and say, you know what? Thank you for that. I needed that, right? And that's what it should be about. And so I hope I answered that question. If I didn't, let me know because sometimes I might go on a tangent. I get passionate about. I'm just passionate about people. And what we don't have in politics today are leaders who are passionate about people. As my friend Whitney Olive would say, people over politics. And it's always should be people over politics. My opponent plays politics. And when you play politics, people's lives are on the line. I'm serious about the things that I'm about because those are the things that are going to help people. They're going to help people think about the possibilities instead of thinking about whether or not if I took my own life, would people care? And we're getting to a point now,
Mm-hmm.
especially with our mental health and just all the things that we see, all the algorithms that we have, whether our phones or laptops or whatever, we're getting to a point now where people are thinking less and less of themselves. They feel like they have no worth. They feel
Mm-hmm.
like it doesn't matter what they do, how productive they think that they are. They could never obtain the quote unquote the American dream. My
Mm-hmm.
job is to try to, and I do this every day, inspire, aspire, make them make them know that they have worth and that they have value, and that at the end of the day, if you just continue to work and work and work hard, that opportunity is right around the door. And so like trying to do that is again is I look at purpose and vision. Those are my reasonings for jumping into politics. Is because I didn't see humanity in my leaders that I've
Mm-hmm.
had in this community and in North Carolina that have shown me the opposite.
Thank you for that, first of all. And then secondly, you mentioned at the beginning about games. Okay. You mentioned about that, and there's a lot of violence that is around that. And our communities are facing a gun violence epidemic, and it's a public health crisis. And we need to address it as a public health crisis. As somebody who is a survivor of gun violence myself, and as somebody who has had two of my closest friends die by gun violence, I these are phone calls that you literally cannot get out of your head. You see them on social media. You mentioned about algorithms. So, scrolling through Facebook, I'm sitting here on my phone, I'm scrolling through Facebook, and I come across a very alarming post that my friend that I went to school with is in the ICU. Okay.
Mhm.
That is not a post that you ever want to read because then your mind's going like, oh, okay, what the fuck happened? Right.
Right, exactly.
Then I reach out to, mutual friends that also know and come to find out she was shot and she's
Wow.
now on life support fighting for her life.
Wow.
Next thing I know, next post I come across is that, I put my phone down. I get hysterical because I'm like, what happened? You right? Like she has 7 kids, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
how in the hell, like if she's gone, how are these kids going to live? What's going to
Yeah.
happen to them?
Yeah.
Are they going to become a part of the state? And we know how that's going to happen. They're going to become a part of a system. And I
Yep.
don't want them to be a part of that system because
Yep.
they had a mom that was a very good mom. And I'm not just saying
Right.
that because she was one of my closest friends, but she legit was. She took care of
Right.
her children. She put her children first before herself. And unfortunately, She succumbed to those injuries and she passed away a couple of days later. Now, this was one of the first people that accepted me. Remember, I said I was one of the first openly LGBTQ kids. She was one of the
Right.
first ones to accept me whenever I came out. She was one of the first ones that accepted me from the very beginning. But I fight like hell for people that have had their loved ones taken by this overwhelming epidemic that every time we see a mass shooting and every time we hear about a school shooting, all we receive is thoughts and prayers every single time. Thoughts and prayers is not going to stop a bullet from entering a classroom. We saw what happened with Sandy Hook in 2012. We saw Uvalde, where police stood outside of the school for 77 minutes. 77 minutes. It was not a drill.
Yeah.
It was not a drill. I know how traumatizing it was to go through active shooter drills.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, two of those times were not a drill. There was a shooting outside that was a domestic dispute at a neighbor's house. Our school went on lockdown. I was not able to get a hold of my mom. The teacher took our phones beginning of class, which is why I do not think that is a in this timeline not a good solution. Um, and I would obviously love to get your opinion about that too. But I know you have a thought about that, but I'm curious to see where we could kind of like meet on that. But and then in high school there was a shooting right outside, and the bullets like ricocheted off of our building. And getting under the table, it's not a drill. Drills are we go through. I live in Tornado Valley, okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we go through like these tornado drills. We have a very active weather pattern, right?
Yeah.
But I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on addressing gun violence in your district, and also, you know, what what does North Carolina need to do to protect students from violence?
Yeah. First off, my condolences to your friend, to you, and that family. It's easy to pull that trigger,
Mhm,
um,
mhm,
but the ripple effects of once you pull that trigger will alter someone's life, whether you hit someone or you don't.
mhm,
And I've been affected by gun violence myself. I talk about in high school. I went to three different funerals. I had three different you know, moms come up to me and say, why couldn't my son be more like you? And this goes back to how I started YMA because they were in gangs, um, and those types of things, you never get over. You know, I think when we talk about gun violence in our communities, with our young people, because they are the ones who are overwhelmingly committing acts of violence. I have to talk about access. Most gun violence occurs in under-resourced areas.
mhm,
I'm one that believes that I don't believe somebody intends to commit crimes. The vast majority of people do not that commit crime don't say that, oh, that's on my bucket list to do.
mhm,
Most people who commit crimes is for survival. Most acts of violence are domestic, meaning that they know the person. Um, but we need to talk about access. Do we know how much guns cost, handguns cost, assault weapons cost? Those things are not cheap. Those things are not cheap. So how are these guns and how are folks getting access so freely to these types of weapons is a conversation that we need to have. That's one. Because it's a complicated topic because you know, throughout my entire life, I never thought that, and like I said, been around it. I've never thought that I needed to have a gun. I don't think it was until really January 6th, and after that, that I thought seriously about having a gun, and then once I became a parent, I had to get a gun in a way,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
And I'm a responsible concealed carry gun owner legally, right? I think we need to have more education on guns. I'm not one who doesn't want to take away your guns or this, that, and the fourth, but
Mhm.
I do believe there's some excessiveness when it comes to the amount of guns people purchase, the style of the weapon that we people purchase.
Mhm.
Um, I think that we need to have better background checks. We need to literally have red flag laws in North Carolina. We don't have that. Um, we need to not deregulate concealed carry um, in North Carolina, which is something they're trying to push and pass here. North Carolina is an open carry state, but to go back to your point about what we do to protect schools and whatnot, when we do in the beginning of the year, multiple times a year, we do those active shooter drills, and we go on or lockdown drills for that matter is what we call them. The first thing that I always tell these kids is, I will take it for you, right? And I take that seriously because I know what it means to say that I will take it for you to protect you. I also will tell my kids that we're going to fight. I believe the way that we do drill sometimes, I don't feel like being in the corner of a room is you know, the best the best example of protecting the whole. Um, so it these things have effects on all of our kids. They have effects on our teachers' mental health. The fact that we have to do these types of drills is unnecessary. I grew up in Columbine, so like when I was in high school, Columbine happened. So like all of these things happen because of Columbine ultimately. And so I just I kind of compare it to what with this White House correspondence thing. I said those people in that room, the millions upon millions of dollars that was in that room, right? The important people, they got a glimpse of what schools go through on a regular basis. So why would we not want to fund schools? Why would we not want to make our schools safer, right? Making our schools safer does not mean or constitute teachers having guns in school. That actually makes schools more dangerous, right? Um, so I do believe that we should have SROs in school. I'm cool with the SROs in school. I think those are important because they also build relationships. It gives our students another line of protection, another line of being able to trust that you can tell that officer something, and that officer will then do investigations. Um, so I'm very passionate about that particular piece. I know I kind of ran on it, but because I think about it because I've lost kids, so many kids to gun violence on both sides. I've lost kids because they got killed, and I've lost kids because they've killed. And these were good kids that made a split second bad decision. And I've lost kids to suicide, which is probably more prevalent than actual somebody shooting someone. And a lot of it is because they had access to a weapon, because whether or not they weren't stored safely, they didn't have the gun safety training, all the different things. And so, um, if we give kids opportunities, if we give our young people opportunities, I don't think that they commit crimes. I think if we can give our young people opportunities to make money the right way, then we will not have as much prevalence of crime. I think if we can provide schools with mental health counselors that are consistently in our buildings, I think if we could provide schools with nurses that are school nurses that don't just show up for once a week and they actually can treat. I think all of these things will prevent, not eliminate, but prevent the chances of violence happening in our schools and in our neighborhoods.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's really critical to get your perspective on this as an educator. I think, this is an angle that is oftentimes left out of the gun violence prevention. like conversation is from the educators that are within the schools, and I know that you also received the gun sense
Yeah.
distinction from Moms Demand
Yep.
Action, which
Yep.
I used to be very active with Moms Demand Action. I was an Every Town Survivor Fellow, and I have a lot of respect for the organization, and I love what they do. I love everything about it. Um, I'm no longer active because I, obviously run my own movement and I incorporate gun violence prevention into it. As a survivor, I want to see more conversation around
Yeah.
gun violence and address it exactly what it is, because we are failing our students and failing our future generations. And it is a policy choice. It is a systemic failure. And you mentioned it just a little bit ago that this also disproportionately affects like Black and brown students and youth and people more than anybody else. And we see it on a daily basis. Like I said, I live right outside of Kansas City, right? Kansas City is no stranger to whenever it comes to gun violence. Our homicide rate last year reached an all-time high
Right.
because of that ease of access to firearms. Missouri is a stand your ground state, like,
Yep. Yep.
quote
Like
unquote,
part of yep. Yep.
stand your ground. We saw what happened in Minneapolis,
Yep.
right? I lived in Minneapolis for a year and a half. I was there the day that they decided not to pursue charges on the police officer that shot and killed Philando Castile.
Yep.
That case sticks with me. I watched it on Facebook Live.
Yep.
I will never get it out of my head. But I also remember what it was like being in a protest with my community members. That was the first time I ever attended a Black Lives Matter protest. And let me tell you, I
Man.
felt more inspired
Yeah.
than I ever did looking at social media and seeing the white supremacists, reach our capital.
Yeah.
What I seen was not what they stated it was. Because news media is complicit in this whenever it comes to twisting these narratives. And they're
Right.
like, oh, look at this, Antifa is taking over the streets. But yet you're silent about breaching the Capitol and literally putting all those people in lives, all those lives in danger. Like
Yeah.
it's just insane to me, Coach.
No, I agree with you. The right likes to promote fear.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I want to fight against fear,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, the narrative that Black Lives Matter is Antifa and it's a mob. Well, the only mobs that Black people know is the Klan, white
Oh,
nationalist movements,
there it is.
right? Um, we don't want to teach real history. We want to teach subjective history in this country. And if it's not sensationalized, it doesn't sell.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of it being, like this is just the straight truth. Unfurthered access, we have paid commentators instead of just, you know, I'm I'm gonna call it out as I see it. And so, it messes with the people's minds. I mean, during that Black Lives Matter movement, um, I myself participated in multiple rallies. I drove to Chicago like that same night about Laquan McDonald. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we are tired, Black folks in general, and Black young people in general. I've been profiled coming from New York City. Stop and frisk was a thing for me. Like I have been stopped and frisked. I have been detained. I have, like all of these different types of things
Mm-hmm.
because not because, you know, I was somebody's so I actually did a thing. I stopped seriously because you fit a profile of a thing which is cap. It's bullshit. Uh you just wanted to accost and harass me, You wanted to put fear in me, and all you did was put fight in me. And what they didn't know is they planted seeds of fight in me, right? And that's what I saw during that Black Lives Matter movement. I saw coalition building with multiple different sets of allies, and in fact, you're seeing it with May Day the other day, and you're seeing it with, when our women's marches and stuff like that. Like the power of the people is always going to be more powerful than any king, wannabe king, dictator, president, um, slash court jester, slash can't wake up during a meeting. Um, like the power of the people is always going to be more dominant. What we need to have is more people standing up and supporting it financially. A lot of these
Mhm.
movements die because it comes and goes like a news cycle
Mhm.
until the next time, right?
Mhm.
Um, I would love to see people, I would love to see a lot of our activists not just I want to see where the proof is in the pudding and a lot of stuff too. Like I hear a lot of people, but then I'm also not seeing the fruits of the labor of some of the people that are you know being the voice. Um, it's more than just marching. It's like when something happens in somebody's community, right? We all tend to just run to the community in response to the emergency. But then what happens once the emergency is no longer the emergency? People just go back to the merry old way. But we didn't do anything to help, like put the safety net, the programs in place to 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 make sure that this doesn't happen again, or we minimize it, right? That's what I believe in. Like we have to start having programs, um, and working with our nonprofit and private sector folks to create these safety nets. And one of the things is like funding a lot of teen centers. And teen centers would are go all the way up to 25 in my mind because most of the violence is
Mhm.
going to be between 13 and 25.
Mhm.
That's primary. Like these folks need things to do. They need opportunities to invest. You talked about expanding expanding CTE. I am a great advocate for trades. I feel like if I was to do it over again, I probably would have gone into like electric lines or something that when a storm happens, I'm getting paid overtime to go do a thing. Like AI is here, but AI ain't building no, they ain't putting them no power lines. That's us. That's gonna be human beings. Something that's recession proof. So I push a lot of my students to try to, if university college ain't for everybody, I don't push that. But at least at the bare minimum, go get you a trade. Go learn a thing. And
Mhm.
when you do that, then you can become a business owner and you don't have to work for someone. And then now you went from somebody who people gave no chance to somebody who's providing lots of chances for other people.
Mhm.
And that's what I want to see. That's the type of community building that we need to be doing. These are things that we can help fund. Help the state can help um, county governments and local governments to be provide more access to that level of stuff. And so yeah, so like we have that. And, I think that's a great way to go about it.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So that concludes this interview, but there's one more thing
Yeah.
that I want to talk about. How can people contribute to your campaign, and how can they uplift the work that you were doing in? And I know your primary was canceled, right? Because you're the only one running.
Yeah, I didn't have a primary. Shout out to the kid.
So you're
I didn't
moving
have
on directly to the general.
general election in November. I was fortunate not to have a primary in 2024 either. And it's not because I don't think anybody wanted to run. I think, when you're called and when you're asked, that you step up to the plate, to the arena, right? Um, I'm asking people who are listening to your podcast, your followers. Um, Listen, I am legitimately going to continue being a public educator and be in the General Assembly. I think that is critically important that our students see someone who's affecting change on a mass level and that you could talk to them, right? So in order for me to do that, I need you. Not only do I need your dollars, whether, $5, $25, I think we're averaging about $25, right? But if you're all of your followers, I think you have a couple thousand, like more than like tens of thousands, right? Even if they all contributed $5 right now, if every last one of y'all contributed $5 right now, that would be such a critical need that helps me pay my staff, that helps me get billboards, that helps me get poll workers, that gets me digital ads. Like you don't know how big a $5 can stretch if it's in mass, right? If you don't have $5 to give, then come phone bank. We phone bank every Wednesday from 6 to 8. If you live in North Carolina, regardless if you live in Alamance County or not, we canvas every Saturday and Sunday from 2 o'clock to 4. Um, the more doors we knock, the more interactions and conversations that we have, the more that's going to help this county flip. And we will flip this county because I'm going to outwork my opponent. My opponent's been in the seat for 14 years and has done nothing but create harm. There's not one piece of tangible legislation that he's helped sponsor or or co-sponsor that has affected the majority of the people of North Carolina and or in people in Alamance County 64th district in a positive way. You will never see him, you will never hear from him. He will duck every opportunity to have a forum. But what I can guarantee you is Coach LeVon Barnes is of the people. For working class people, for all people, whether you vote for me or not, I will be there where you can reach out, touch, have a conversation with me. And if you're undecided and if you're frustrated about how things are going in this state in Alamance County, I'm just as tired and just as frustrated as you. And I would not spend my time running for an office if I didn't feel there was a necessity to do. So I'm asking you, you could look, I'm asking you for your vote clearly in November if you live in the 64th district. But I'm asking you for your dollars. I'm asking you for your time. I'm asking you for your send me that good juju vibe. And you can follow me at Levon, L-E, capital V-O-N, 4NC.com. You'll see all my information on there. And believe me, I'll come out to your city. If you want to host a fundraiser for me, I'll come out there and do it. So I'm here for you. I just appreciate the opportunity to be on the show. And yeah, let's go do this.
Absolutely. I am sending every ounce of support your way. This has been a really eye-opening conversation for me because, like I said, the educator perspective on gun violence is incredibly critical to me. So, again, thank you, Coach. I appreciate you and good luck in November, and I'll see you out there.
Absolutely. Thank you.